As we go through tonight, friends, if you have questions, you want to put those in the chat, and there'll be opportunities for questions as we go. And you're going to be, it's going to be a great presentation tonight. All right, Danny, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm sure some more folks will be joining us as we go.
Well, for those of you who haven't been with us before, thank you for coming. You're welcome to be here. We're so glad to be able to provide support for bivocational and small group or small church pastors. We've been working at this since last fall, I guess last summer actually, and we meet every 2 months. You're welcome to join us. Just just log in as you have to excuse me. I'm supposed to be on vacation, and I'm still trying to get over not being there. So it's a long story, but it's just so great to have you here. Just log in and click on the link, and you can get in as we approach another year. We're glad to have and pleased to have Lawrence Lee with us tonight on a very important subject for this time of year, and that's those doggone statistical reports that we have to deal with and we have to give to our laity, and then they don't know what to do and we don't know what to do, and we kind of scratch our head and leave them go to the last minute. And then Lawrence and other folks have to just hound us to get them in. So it's great to have you here so we can get this stuff out of the way and be somewhat informed. Before we get started and turn it over to Lawrence, I'm going to ask Derek Gutierrez, who's working with us as an intern for a couple of weeks, a couple more weeks, I guess, as part of his seminary education, to open us with a prayer. Derek?
Let's bow our heads. Holy Creator, we give thanks for this evening where we can gather together and just move from a season of celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ into a season of stewardship, dear Lord. Lord, as we work hard to gather the information that will help us to be effective in our ministries and gather it and report it and do all the work that is necessary to just understand the movements and growths and how our churches change over the years. Lord, help us to see this as important, vital work that helps everyone in their planning, everyone in their, as we forecast and just try to understand where the church is moving. So Lord, help us to come forward this evening with good questions that help us all to learn from one another and to just, so we understand where we're at in this process, whether we're new to this process or whether we're experts and want to share what we've learned over the years. Help us to just all be open to greater understanding. Lord, we ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. And before Lawrence shares with us, let me just introduce him to you tonight. Lawrence A. Lee, MBA, is Comptroller and Senior Accountant in the Eastern Pennsylvania Annual Conference Treasurer's Office. He is also a former church treasurer, and so he has most likely done these statistics reports in many different capacities. He is also a Christ servant minister, and he just retired December 11th from the U.S. Coast Guard with the rank of chief after 30 years service. And so we rejoice in Lawrence's ministry in so many ways. We celebrate with him on that retirement. Yeah, let's give thanks. I see some of you cheering on. I know it's hard in Zoom. You don't get like the noise, but Lawrence, can you hear the celebration? And Lawrence is an absolute joy. I mean, I've been able to work with Lawrence over these past about now, I guess, going on about 2 years. And it's a delight to serve with him in ministry. He always brings grace and joy to the work he does. He does it with a love of Jesus. And so, Lawrence, we're really thankful tonight. We know this is your busy season as you conclude end of the year reporting. And we're so thankful that you took time to be with us and to share around church statistics. So we'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Dawn. That was a wonderful introduction. And to everyone, it is good to be with you. I am just happy to be here and happy to share. We will take some breaks along the way. So if there's questions or in between, you can either put them in the chat and Derek is going to attend to those, or when we pause kind of in between subjects, we'll go ahead and reach out for those. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so can everyone see and everyone hear?
Perfect.
All right. So for the statistical reports, everyone has a chance to do it every year. Why do we do it? Why is it important? Some things to know. So how do you get in? The website is there. We did send out a package of information to the churches. Hopefully you've received it, kind of with steps and how-tos and things of that nature. We use the same username every year, which is your church's 6-digit GCFA number that can be found on numerous documents, last year's report, can be found on your remittance statements, things of that nature. And the password is STAT 2021. It usually goes up incrementally each year by 1 digit, so it's easy to try to remember. Things that are new for this year, the due date. The due date is usually well into the spring. It's now February 28th. So it's new to us, but actually other annual conferences do have earlier reporting. So we're going to live into that. That's one big sea change, but just so you know, the due date is the end of next month. But once you log on, you'll be asked to go ahead and change your password. You can do that. However, it's not required. As a matter of fact, I often recommend keeping that password, keeping that STAT 2021, because if you have various people who are going to be entering data, the first person who logs in, if they change it to I love cats 1303, no one else knows what that password is, and then you're going to have trouble when the person who does the finance tries to get in and the person who has a membership has changed the password. So again, not required. Some of maybe a best practice is just to keep that default password. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine someone from Church A really wanting to know how many female African-American members there are at Church B. So, I mean, it's an open password system, but it's really not that high tech, or I should say, not top secret information. So before we can get started, because unless you're a numbers guy like I am, this can be boring, right? Statistics and numbers and crunching and all of that stuff. So why do we do this? Well, because the church, the general church says so, because it's in our discipline. Not very interesting, does not grab my attention. You got anything else for me, Lawrence? Well, yes, because it directly impacts how much I get billed from the annual conference. Ha! Well, why didn't you tell me that first? You had me at hello. Tell me more. What is that you were saying about how much we owe? So your apportionments are really terms that many people use interchangeably between apportionments and your direct bill. Apportionments, just like your local church, is apportioned by the Eastern Pennsylvania Annual Conference. We at the conference are apportioned by the general church based on the information that's in our statistical reports. So the apportionments technically are the connectional ministries, the World Service, and the general church. Everything else that's on your remittance statement is a direct bill or a reimbursement of that which the conference has already paid on your church's behalf. So that would include your property and liability, your clergy pension, your clergy medical, your workers' compensation, everything that's not connectional, World Service, or general church, but like everybody who uses an adhesive bandage calls it a Band-Aid, most people, probably myself included, if I'm not if I'm not really sharp on my game, we'll just use the general term of apportionments to reference any and all funds that the local church sends to the annual conference. I'm going to put a pause here. Any questions so far? So what is the apportionment formula that we've been talking about? Because we have to get buy-in. I know we're supposed to be talking statistics, but just a little cursory on the apportionment formula to understand the impact of what you and your churches and your members are putting into the statistical report, and how that has a great impact coming back to you on your amount billed. So we won't be here long, but I just wanted to make sure we have a clear understanding. The apportionment formula is 9.5% of the 3-year rolling average of the adjusted gross total paid as reported on your statistical report. Well, that was a mouthful. What is this AGTP that you speak of? So very glad you asked. The adjusted gross total paid is the total paid, and that's on the lines that we'll get to when we actually get further along in the presentation, of what the church pays out, what you're reporting that the church pays out, minus 3 areas: minus your apportionments and your direct bill, minus your interest and principal on the debt, and capital expenses, building improvements, things of that nature. And we use a 3-year rolling average, because if you have large expenses in 1 year, that sort of gets smoothed out. Or maybe you have a shortfall 1 year where something happened and you don't have higher expenses, it smooths that out over a 3-year rolling average. So your apportionments for 2022, which we sent out in October of 2021, were based on your 2018, 2019, and 2020 statistical reports. Questions? So last piece before we move on, did someone unmute? Was someone getting ready to ask a question? So the last piece before we get into the tables, what else is gained or discerned from the statistical report? The cabinet is looking at church vitality when they try to align clergy with churches and things of that nature, and what churches are growing and so forth. So again, those things you're reporting: your attendance, mission, Sunday school, how much you're giving to mission. Is the church vital? Is the church growing? So that's it. Now let's dig into the reporting lines, and we'll show how this will come back. So there are 3 tables. Actually, there are 4 tables. There's 3 tables that go to the general church, to GCFA, and 1 table, which is table 4, is information that we keep here at the annual conference level. So let not your heart be troubled. We had not planned to go line by line over this, but just to highlight different sections. Again, if there are questions, either chat them in or when we pause, but this is really just the facts, ma'am, just the facts, sir. What is your membership? And that is showing here. And again, the breakdown of your membership, both by race and by gender. And again, you will get an error if your total lines, if you see there, you want your total, the total ethnicity number and the total gender number to match what your church is reporting as your total membership. And it will error if that is not the case. So here is,
Lawrence?
Yes.
Lawrence, you go back to that chart. So on the ethnic, we're talking about membership, full members. Is that we're professing members?
So let me see. I have a little explanation for that. Hold on a second. Let me get my lines. So when that's total members, as you count them, when we have, there'll be another breakdown of total members who have not become professing members, associate members or affiliated members. And so just give me a few minutes and we'll try to circle back to that.
Okay.
I guess the most important thing, and that's coming up on a few slides, especially when we get to worship attendance, whatever you are using, be consistent with it, right? So if you're going to say, you know, we want to have a good membership number. So if you're saying, you know, a member in good standing is someone who's given financially to the church, or if, you know, someone who attends 3 Sundays out of 4, however your body determines membership, just be consistent with that year after year. And I did see DS Morton on, so if there's anything that from the cabinet that they know that can shed some light or something that I may take us off track on, please feel free to share that as well. So worship attendance. Because of COVID, because of all of these health issues, worship attendance is something that's a little bit harder to get our arms around as it has been in the past, than it had been in the past. So again, some things to think about. If your church has done some sort of online or Zoom or Facebook, here's some ways to think about counting those people. And again, if you jumped, I'm not going to read the whole screen. If you jump to the very bottom, we realize it's a difficult year for identifying where all we ask is that you do your best, right? So in the center, it talks about Zoom. We understand sometimes a family could be on one login. So if you have one Zoom member or one YouTube person, there may be actually 2 or 3 or 4 people or members who are there. So just take your best guess, do your best, and really that's all we ask, right? Just as in our faith, we are working towards perfection. We are not there yet. Questions? All right. So we talked about, I had mentioned before, some of the things that are looked for are, I don't want to say signs of life, but signs of growth, right? So church vitality is your participation in Bible school for your members, are those numbers going up? That's where this is where you get a chance to input that information.
Lawrence,
yes.
sorry to pause you there. Just going back to the online worship for a moment, we have had some pretty extreme outliers. So, you know, one congregation that reported thousands of online worshipers, a congregation that normally, you know, that may or may not be the people who are fully engaged in the life of the church. So just, you know, as you're reporting online, you want to be careful of some of those. And it talks about that in that spreadsheet, but, you know, having 100 views may or may not be people literally, right, with it, like with you for that whole worship service. So just a pause on that. And then on the vital metrics, these are really, really important as you fill them out. So please know, for each of our churches, we're looking at each of these vital markers that Lawrence just put up on this slide for us. So I'll stop, Lawrence, but please know how significant these are.
So thank you for that. Again, we want to give reason without sort of beating it to death that it is important, that it is vital, and that this information does help guide and direct both billing to the conference or from the conference to the church, and also, you know, leadership and what happens in the church. So this matters. So that's why I wanted to try to put that up front and try to solicit buy-in from our participants. Wow, we're up to 45 participants. of why it's important. Otherwise, it just becomes a, here comes the report again. We have to do this every year. Why is it important? Boy, this takes a lot of my time. I'm just going to put in the same numbers from last year and keep it moving because I have other things to do. So we'll say data in, data out, rather than use the word that begins with G, in and out. So it is important. It's not just a thing. It does matter. Questions?
Lawrence, there is a question in the chat related to how will putting in these metrics, our best guess, affect our apportionment dollars? And I'm going to let you answer it. I answered it in the chat, but why don't you answer it for everyone?
So when you're talking best guess, if we're still talking at table 1, it will not affect your apportionment at all. Your apportionment, and thank you for that question. It's based on what the church reports as what they've paid, right? So the pastor's salary, the electric bill, the musician, the custodian, those types of things. Your membership does not affect your apportionment. I remember I've been a Methodist for a long time, and I know at one point the apportionment formula was tied to membership. But truly, friends, it has not been since 2007 or so that was uncoupled from membership, and it went towards expenses paid. So what you put in as your best guess, we're just looking for trends. Help me, cabinet members and extended cabinet. We're looking for trends, and is the church growing, not growing? Is it? But it does not directly, or excuse me, it does not at all tie to how much you're going to be apportioned, the membership piece. It's just, and if some had joined late, and I'm not going to go all the way back to the beginning, but it's a percentage of what you say that you have paid, and the details are earlier on if some had missed that. But I know that this will be shared again. So I'm going to move on unless there are any additional questions. So this is just breakdown for the membership, right? It's just the numbers. That's what I'm saying. So table 1 is sort of just the facts, ma'am, just the facts, sir. So one person may be doing that, whereas table 2, which talks about money in, and table 3, which is money out, that may be done by a different group of people, maybe entering that at different times. Again, why, as I said at the beginning, it might be a good idea to just have that commonly known password so that folks can get in at different times to input this, especially because the due date has now been moved up to February 28th, which is earlier than it usually is.
Lawrence, before
yes.
you go into table 2, can you go back to those cabinet priorities for a second? I just want to talk with people momentarily.
Wrong direction.
That's okay. No,
There we go.
keep going. Go to the one that says, there we go. Okay. So I want to remind everyone, when the stat report asks for how many disciples are engaged in hands-on mission, that you can think about that in terms of your members who are doing mission. It's not necessarily right in your local church. It might be someone who teaches at an after-school program at your elementary school, right? All of that counts. And these numbers aren't tied to your apportionments, but these are numbers that we look at when we determine, is this church vital, right? A vital church, it's not just about finances, that's a portion of vitality, but it's also about how many people are engaged in small groups, how many people are engaged in hands-on mission. So if you haven't taken time to go back and look carefully at these numbers, I know sometimes, now I'll make a confession, every once in a while when I was serving a church, I would look at what was put in the year before, and I'd put in the same thing the next year. Don't do that, okay? Don't do that. That's very tempting, especially when you have so many things on your plate. I really want you to take time to look at these 5 things. I want you to look at it all, but I also want you to recognize how important these things are. So how many people are actually attending in worship? How many people are in your small groups? And Small groups, again, are not just Bible studies, right? There are people who are in grief share. There are people who are in Celebrate Recovery. There are people who are in the choir that have really formed a small group. So how many people are in small groups? How many people are in Hands on Mission? And then your professions of faith and baptism. And then what have you given to mission? So just know that these are the factors. These 5 factors are what we consider a vital church. And we are literally looking to see, how is your church doing? And these are the things that we're going to look at. So I just want you to know, and if you have any questions about that, we can do those at the end. Thanks, Lawrence. I will not speak anymore. Keep going.
No, please, don't tie yourself down to that, because everyone has a little bit of information, and I know at your level you have different perspective and different information. So please share. So don't not share. Please share. So table 2, assets and expenses. Again, this is not death by PowerPoint. We're not reading every line, and most folks have probably done this before. So we're just answering kind of top line questions, nuances, best practices. But again, all these lines are in your stat report, so I'm not going to read them line for line. Things to know. So here, money's paid directly by the local church for causes don't include funds that are sent to the conference office. So that's an important thing. It says they're not sent to. So that is, if you send money to United Methodist Neighborhood Services or something directly, or you send it to and perhaps you're supporting a United Methodist affiliated college university, things of that nature that don't come through the annual conference, because we keep track of those apportionments, right? I use the general Band-Aid term, apportionments and direct bill. We keep track of those things that you send unto us, and we will add those in. So don't double add those. Only things that are not sent to the conference you want to add here. And then, so all of the apportionment and direct bill lines, those are not showing on the report that you see. We have them hidden, and then we add that information, your apportionment and direct bill, before it gets sent to GCFA. Compensation here, thing to know, don't include housing, because housing is included in the next line in 42. When you're talking about your pastoral compensation, don't take that total compensation. Be sure you break out housing, because the housing comes next. Reimbursement, cash allowances, other staff. So here would be, of course, your organist, your custodian, sexton, the person in charge of your youth ministry, those types of things. Other non-appointed, right? The appointed by the bishop's staff, all of that comes in here. Questions? Trying to be brief.
There's a question from Pastor Scott Johnson. He's asking, what is the impact of any COVID PPP loan that was forgiven?
Let me get back to you on that. My initial thought was that the PPP would have been forgiven in 21 and would have been forgiven in 20 and reported in 21. This is 21 stats report. I didn't research that. That's the confession. I was thinking that PPP was like the year before. We've been in COVID for so long. So I do owe you an answer on that. I don't know the answer to that. If anyone does who's on the call, please feel free. I'll pause, but I don't have an answer for that. So I apologize for that. And I will get an answer.
There's another question regarding line 37. Does UMCOR donations count in that line?
So if you've given UMCOR and you've given it through the church, if you've given it through the conference, let me think about this answer. You can report it. So when we the conference, we send out the information, or we add the GCFA, we add the 6 special Sundays. That gets in the weeds, because there is an UMCOR Sunday. we add the special Sunday giving, but if you give to UMCOR Advanced Special 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Congo, or Advanced Special 5, 6, 7, 8 for water filtration or something like that, then count that. We would report and I hope I'm being clear and not further confusing. So if you give to UMCOR Sunday or Student Sunday or World Communion or Native American Awareness, the 6 special designated givings, we would include those funds. But if you give to advanced specials, UMCOR and things of that nature, we would not see that, or we see it, but we don't include that in what we send. So you should be reporting it here.
Lawrence,
Yes.
is that true for products that are given as well? I'm thinking about cleaning kits particularly, which this year, we did a significant number. So we received offerings made out to the church for that purpose, but the money did not go through the church and would not be reported here because they were used to buy product which we assembled and then took out.
So I would think with Reverend Taylor Storm's comments, if you want to talk about charitable giving, that those churches would want to reflect that and would want to report that, I would believe. I don't know if she's still on. Yes, I think you would want to. So those could be line 38 or non-United Methodist Benevolent Charitable Causes. But I believe it. I believe the direction from the cabinet is clear. Honest reporting. We're not just trying to make numbers up to make us look good, but we want to certainly get credit, if you will, for that charitable giving that has been done.
Okay, thank you.
Lawrence, this is Scott Johnson. So in normal accounting world, if you have a loan forgiven or on your income taxes, if somebody forgives a loan against you, that's treated as income for IRS purposes. And for instance, somebody might get a grant from a government or a foundation or something. So I'm sure this has come up in other years, but because the PPP loans were so, there would have been so many churches that had substantial income from those loans. You might want to run that by the folks at Nashville and just so there's a clarification across the denomination. There would have been an awful lot of them that would have been forgiven in 21.
I will do that. Yes, that's my commitment. I was not prepared for that, but I will get it back to you. We'll get back to you on that. When we get to the 50s, the 53 and 54 lines, when it talks about income, we'll see if there's anything we can tease out from that as well. This is where we were.
Lawrence, there's one more question,
Yep.
Again, related to UMCOR. So the person is asking, the special offering we just did for UMCOR for tornado relief goes on line 37, as that's not a special Sunday. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
37?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. Okay. So your program expenses, this is where, your operating expenses, things of that nature. Now, this particular slide was borrowed and renamed from Greater New Jersey. We right now just have a line 47. We don't have a line 47 A, B, C, or D. Our line 47 is total amount spent for other local church operating expenses. And it says in parentheses, utilities, office expense, maintenance. They have it broken down here, but we just have a total for line 47 for other local church operating expenses. So that's not your ministry, which is 46, and it's not your clergy salary and housing, which is 42 and 41. And so these line items here, or I should say 48 and 49, are items that would decrease your apportionment, or I should say decrease your adjusted gross total paid. If you remember, so we take line 50, which is hidden on the report that you see. And the reason why it's hidden is because we've not yet added the apportionments and direct bill that you have paid. Because right now, this minute, we're still collecting up until a week from today, we're collecting for 2021 apportionments. So once we get apportionments and direct bill, once we get all of that, then we can get an accurate line 50, which is your total paid. So that's why it's hidden. So I'm in the weeds, I apologize. Line 50 minus 49 minus 48 minus your apportionments paid. You take 9.5% of that, and that is your, and you take a 3-year average of that, 9.5%, and that is what is your, that's what is apportioned to the local church for Connectional Ministries, World Service, and General Church. So again, that is how the accuracy affects your apportionment dollars or apportionment bill. Best practices, have more than one person look at it. Again, when you're up against the deadline and people are putting numbers in quickly, I would say out of the 400 churches, 400 give or take, 5 each year, or I should say 5 the following year, will come and say, hey, our apportionments went through the roof compared to last year. And so the first thing James will say to me, the treasurer, I'll look on my own, is let's see the stat report. Let's see where the numbers came from. And 9 times out of 10, someone added a 0, and they've now 10 times increased whatever line, whatever expense line it was. They've inadvertently over-reported or overstated their expenses. And again, data in, data out. Substitute the word data if you want. But that's why we've said in the letter that I send, the accuracy directly impacts your apportionment bill. And for those churches, it's not that we won't correct it, but that's what happens when you see the spike and people pass out. That's the reason often is because there's been over reporting. But if that is the case, if it is moving a 0, we will absolutely correct it if you bring it to our attention. Questions? We're shifting tables. So now we're looking at income, giving units, pledged, non-pledged, and unidentified givers. Truth in advertising. I don't believe that folks get too wrapped up around did these funds come from a pledge or non-pledge. Folks are just happy to receive the pledges, and so again, do the best you can, but that's not something you shouldn't be getting a call from your DS. Are you sure you had this many pledge givers? And I thought maybe you had some non-pledge givers. It's not that deep. It's just, what is the total income in for the church? And again, this number, income in, can serve to inform the cabinet is vitality, right? Are they expending more than they're taking in? But this table 3 does not affect your apportionment bill. So so again, we're looking at the total income, and here you're going to see fundraisers and things of that nature. And down on line 53D. So that's when you're saying the funds received from special Sundays, advances, grants, and things of that nature. That's where you would put that. Excuse me, that would be 53. That would be grants. Let me look here. 53B, your memorials, endowments, and bequests, or other projects you could put on that line 53. Anything that's not any of the above. And I'm wondering out loud, but I will verify, if that's some of where your PPP forgiveness would go, if you're saying you're going to charge it as income. But for the recording, I need to verify that, and I'll certainly let people know. 54C is grants. 54.
Lawrence, James gave a 54C, but he is not in front of the report, and so he did give lines but it's from his really good memory. He said he believes it's 54C.
I see it now. I didn't click far enough. Other grants and financial support from institutional sources. So yeah, I will, again, James and I we will dig that up and get that out to you. But now I've brought up 54C on the screen, and actually that rings a bell from last year when we were doing this. So that's it. Let me see. Questions? Additional information, we just asking about the number of employees and things of that nature. Again, this just stays within the annual conference. That doesn't get reported out. And we are almost finished, believe it or not. So if you have questions, go through your DRAs first, your district resource assistants. You can email me as well. And a reminder of the due date. It has been my joy to be with you. Hope I tried to make it light and entertaining and not totally bogged down, but this is all I have, folks.
Dawn, do we have any other questions coming up there that you see?
Derek, do you see anything in the chat that we missed?
There was one question about whether one person was involved in 4 things. Does that count as one person or 4? Then it went off in a different direction because it was about NA and AA. But again, the question.
I raised that question. Particularly, I was concerned. We have some people who are involved in 3 or 4 ministries in the church. Are they one person each, or are they 3 people each?
Well, so for membership, they're one person. But I think what Dawn was saying is, if you're looking at hands-on ministry, is that the question? Like, is it 4 different?
That is exactly the question.
I think you'd have to
hands-on
look
ministry.
at, Lawrence, let's go back to that line, because I think it says number of persons. So it's still one person is one person, but let's make sure. Like, I don't think it says the number of ministries. Does that, let's check it. So like let's give an example. Number 16 is number of ongoing small groups, right?
Right.
So that would be how many small groups do you have? And then I'm trying to see one where there's a participant. I think everybody counts as one person. That's what I'm.
Okay. So you don't take the total of each group, add them together, and come up with 150 when you got 5.
Right. Now, here's where you may, though, Denny. So like in line 22, number of persons from your congregation serving in mission community ministries, that one is person, right? One counts as one. But the number 23, number of persons served by your community ministries. So you might be a small church, but you might be serving hundreds of people, right? So through your NA, AA, right, your meal program, church dinners, whatever, you might be serving many people in those ministries. So that could be, that one person could serve 10 people. That's where it becomes bigger.
Okay, thank you.
And there's a question about counting. Can we count people who are not members but are committed to volunteer at church? So when you say persons as opposed to members, would that qualify?
I think so.
Yeah, in number 22, it says persons who served on behalf of your church, right? So
Yes, they don't have to be a member. They don't have to be a member to serve.
right.
Sure.
So in that line, it would be, some of them are more specific than others regarding who's being counted. So again, that's where you want to go back and read them. This is, and it has changed over the years. That's why you just don't want to take last year's and put it in this year's column.
We have another question regarding a church received a gift from another church that closed. So what line would they record that?
Hold on, let me look here. Church received from the sale, no. Received through building use fees, no. Funds from other sources and projects, including sale of buildings, would be 53C. Let me get there. Or
It's not, it's a totally different church that isn't in our conference who sold their church. Their church closed down and they were able to distribute certain dollar amounts to different churches within the community. Now, it wasn't a previous United Methodist Church. It was actually a Baptist church that had closed.
so I am looking on that table 3, and I mean, so the catch-all, right? The catch-all is that 54 income from connectional or other institutional sources outside of the local church. So that's the catch-all. Or 53C, would you call it a grant or financial support? You're just reporting dollars. Total income from designated cause, that's not designated cause, not special Sundays. 53C from other sources and projects. It says including the sale of buildings, but it doesn't have, so I would say 53C, and again, this falls under the best guess. 50, is it showing? Sorry, got changed. 53C, funds from other sources, or the catch-all, the 54, total income from connectional and other institutional sources outside of the local church. So I would say as long as it's there, wherever you, yeah. It's not going to be in the 52s because the 52s are from your givers, your members. So it's not going to be in the 52s. I would try to give it a home in the 53s or the catch-all of 54. In this case, I would say it's not as critical where it is, just as long as you account for it and you put it there.
Lawrence, I want to go back. Somebody else have a question there?
Yeah, there was one final question. When do you think we could going to know the details of the PPP loan, if it needs to be included or not?
So by this time next week, I'll probably see James tomorrow, and we'll work on it, or I'll email the folks in Nashville. But yeah, I just apologize. I was not prepared for that, so I don't know the answer to that.
We do know it does need to be included. So if you did see in the chat where I put in James' response, how it should be included, and I do believe that that line was correct as well.
That was the 54.
54C.
He thought Lawrence 54C, but we'll send out, what we can do is we could send out the PowerPoint to all the attendees and include in that, Lawrence, your response. We'll have Derek get that from you and send it out and make sure that those who attended can have access to that.
Perfect.
Lawrence, I want to go back to the ethnicity question. And my question is, are we counting baptized members, professing members in those numbers? And let's say just guests who make up the congregation, they may not have joined. They might be constituents. Are they included? Are we be reporting them or not? in the context of their ethnicity.
So when you're talking about okay, if I'm understanding the question correctly, your number for your total ethnicity has to equal your total for total professing members. So if you're going to say, the subgroups that you said, are they professing but not yet? If you're going to include them in your total membership, then you would include them in your ethnicity breakdown, because that number 4 has to equal number 5, has to equal number 6. Those all have to equal. I'm not sure if I answered or if I went left.
No,
but
that's helpful. It's professing members.
yes. So whatever you put in 4, whatever number you put in 4 has to equal the number in 5. It has to equal the number in 6.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we've looked at a lot in statistics is number of baptisms and number of professions of faith, and just one life. So you really do see when we track this for churches, just one baptism, it shows vitality. So we're not looking for 20, 25, we're looking for 1. We're really excited when we see this church had 1. We're of course really excited when this church had 7 confirmands, but I will tell you right now, with the metrics, seeing that there's 1 or 2 or 3, that also gets us really excited. So don't underestimate the value of that one life, that one baptism, because we have many churches that for years it's 0, 0, 0. And that tells us a lot about our vitality, right? If we don't have any new people coming in, whether by baptism or profession of faith, then are we really living out that Great Commission? So.
Do we have any other questions? Well, we're so glad to be able to ask Lawrence to join us and really help us understand this report, of the importance of the report, and clarify some of these questions. You know how to reach him if you have additional questions, and he put that information on the board. We're going to meet again in 2 months, and we'll have another topic that is particularly germane to bivocational and small church pastors. In the meantime, the Lord bless your ministry and bless you in all that you do. Thanks for coming. Good night.
Thanks, Lawrence. Good night, friends. Thanks so much, Lawrence.
My pleasure. Everyone have a good night. Be safe, stay warm.